My name is Mary. I am 22 years old, and I live in a small town. Life here is quiet. Every day feels the same. I wake up, go to work, and come home. Sometimes, I go to the cafe near my house. It is my favorite place. I love the smell of coffee and the sound of people talking. One sunny afternoon, I decided to go to the cafe. I wanted to relax and read my book. I took my favorite seat by the window. The sun was warm, and the light made everything look golden. I opened my book and started to read. Then, I heard a voice. "Excuse me," the voice said. I looked up. A man was standing in front of me. He had dark hair and bright green eyes. He was holding a cup of coffee. "Can I sit here?" he asked, pointing to the chair across from me. I was surprised. Most people leave me alone when I read, but he had a kind smile, so I said, "Sure." He sat down and put his coffee on the table. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he said. "It's okay," I replied. For a moment, we sat in silence. I tried to read my book, but I could feel him looking at me. It made me nervous. "My name is Lucas," he said. "Hi, Lucas. I'm Mary," I said, closing my book. "It's nice to meet you, Mary. Do you come here often?" he asked. "It's a quiet place, and I like the coffee here," I said. "I like it too. This is my first time here," he said. We started to talk. Lucas told me he was new in town. He moved here for work. He liked to travel and meet new people. He had an interesting way of telling stories. I laughed a lot. The cafe was busy, but it felt like we were the only ones there. I noticed small things about him. He had a soft voice and a gentle way of speaking, but there was something else, something I couldn't explain. After an hour, Lucas stood up. "I have to go," he said. "But it was nice talking to you, Mary." "It was nice talking to you too," I said. He smiled and walked away. I watched him leave. Something about him stayed in my mind. I tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate. Who was he? Why did he talk to me? As I walked home that evening, I kept thinking about Lucas. He seemed nice, but there was something I couldn't understand. It was like a puzzle I needed to solve. When I got home, I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sun was setting, and the sky was orange and pink. I thought about my life. It was simple, and I liked it that way. But Lucas made me curious. Was this the start of something new? Or was it just a strange moment that I would forget? I didn't know the answer. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stop thinking about him. The next time I saw Lucas was a few days later. I was walking to the park near my house. The air was cool, and the trees were full of green leaves. I liked to walk there to clear my mind. As I turned a corner, I saw him sitting on a bench, looking at his phone. "Lucas," I said, surprised. He looked up and smiled. "Mary, hi, what a nice surprise." I walked closer. "Do you live near here?" I asked. "Yes, just a few blocks away," he said. "I like to come here and think. What about you?" "I come here all the time. It's my favorite place," I said. "Maybe it's my favorite place now too," he said with a small laugh. I laughed too. We decided to walk together. We talked about simple things, the weather, the park, and our favorite foods. Lucas told me about his love for photography. He liked to take pictures of nature and people. "Maybe I can take a picture of you one day," he said. I felt my cheeks turn red. "Maybe," I said softly. After that day, we started spending more time together. We went for walks in the park, drank coffee at the cafe, and even watched a movie at the small theater in town. Lucas always had something interesting to say. He was funny, kind, and very thoughtful. One evening, he invited me to see the stars. "There's a hill outside town where you can see the sky very clearly," he said. "Would you like to go?" "Sure," I said. We drove there as the sun was setting. The sky turned pink and orange. And then, as the night came, it was full of stars. We sat on a blanket and looked up. "It's beautiful," I said. "It is," Lucas agreed. "But the stars are not as beautiful as you." I looked at him, surprised. He smiled at me. My heart felt warm, but at the same time, something inside me was unsure. Lucas was perfecter, almost perfect. There were moments when he seemed too careful with his words, like he was hiding something. Sometimes he would pause and change the subject when I asked him about his past. One day, we were walking by the lake in the park. It was quiet, and the water was calm. Lucas stopped and picked up a small stone. He threw it into the water, and it made tiny ripples. "Mary," he said, looking at the ripples, "do you ever think about the things you've done in the past?" I looked at him, surprised by the question. "Sometimes," I said. "Why do you ask?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the water. "Sometimes I think about the mistakes I've made," he said finally. "I wish I could go back and fix them." His words made me feel uneasy. What mistakes was he talking about? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I wasn't sure if I was ready to know the answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lucas. He was kind, but there was a part of him I didn't understand. What was he hiding? The next time we met, we went to the cafe. He brought me a small gift, a notebook with a beautiful cover. "I saw this and thought of you," he said. "Thank you, Lucas. It's beautiful," I said. As I looked at the notebook, I felt happy, but also confused. Lucas was so thoughtful, but his words by the lake stayed in my mind. I couldn't forget them. Later that evening, as we walked back to my house, Lucas suddenly stopped. "Mary," he said, "I need to tell you something." I looked at him, my heart beating fast, but then he shook his head. "No, never mind. It's not important," he said with a small laugh. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes, it's nothing," he said. I nodded, but deep down, I knew it wasn't nothing. There was something Lucas wanted to say, but he wasn't ready. As I watched him walk away that night, I felt both happy and uneasy. Lucas had become an important part of my life, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. The sun was shining through the trees, and a soft breeze made the leaves dance. Lucas and I were sitting on a bench in the park, sharing a bag of pretzels. He seemed relaxed, but I noticed he was quieter than usual. "Is everything okay, Lucas?" I asked. He looked at me and gave a small smile. "Yes, well, maybe no. There's something on my mind," he said. I put the bag of pretzels down and turned to face him. "What is it?" Lucas hesitated, rubbing his hands together nervously. "I don't usually talk about this," he said. "You can tell me," I said softly. He nodded and took a deep breath. "A few years ago, I made a mistake." "A big one," he began. I felt my chest tighten. "What kind of mistake?" "There was a girl I knew. Her name was Anna," he said. "We were friends. She was sweet and kind, but I wasn't honest with her. I pretended to care more than I did. She trusted me, and I let her down." I stared at him, feeling the air grow heavier. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Lucas looked down at his hands. "I told her things that weren't true. I made promises I couldn't keep. And when she needed me the most, I disappeared. I hurt her, Mary. I didn't mean to, but I did. My heart started to race. Memories I had tried to bury began to surface. I thought of a time when I was younger, a time when someone had broken my trust. Could Lucas be talking about the same person? "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Because I've changed," he said. "I'm not proud of what I did, but I've learned from it. I want to be better, and I want to be honest with you." His words hung in the air. I wanted to believe him, but a part of me felt cold and distant. "Did you ever talk to her again?" "To Anna?" I asked. Lucas shook his head. "No, I didn't have the courage. I thought it was better to stay away." I looked away, staring at the trees and the people walking by. My mind was spinning. Lucas didn't know, but his story was more connected to my life than he could imagine. A few years ago, I had been hurt by someone I trusted. Someone who made me feel special and then disappeared without a word. Could it really be Lucas? "Mary, are you okay?" Lucas asked, pulling me out of my thoughts. I turned back to him, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine," I said. "It's just ... a lot to think about." "I understand," he said. "I just wanted to be honest with you. I don't want to make the same mistakes again." We sat in silence for a while. Lucas looked at the ground, and I stared at the sky, trying to calm my racing thoughts. When we said goodbye that day, I felt a mix of emotions. I was glad Lucas was honest with me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his story was connected to mine. At home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. My mind replayed his words again and again. I thought about the pain I had felt years ago, and how hard it had been to move on. If Lucas was the one who hurt me, could I forgive him? The next time we met, I was determined to find out the truth. We went for a walk by the river. The water sparkled in the sunlight. "Lucas," I said, breaking the silence, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," he said. "Do you remember the town where you lived before you moved here?" I asked carefully. He nodded. "Yes, I lived in Brighton for a few years." "Why?" My heart sank. "Brighton, that was where it happened." "And Anna," I continued, my voice shaking slightly. "What was she like?" Lucas looked at me, surprised by my question. "She was sweet," like I said. "She had brown hair and blue eyes. She loved to draw and write stories." I felt a lump in my throat. His words described me perfectly. "Lucas," I said softly, "I think I know Anna." His eyes widened. "You do?" "Yes," I said, tears welling up in my eyes because Anna was me. For a moment, Lucas didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his face pale. "Mary," he whispered, "I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. I'm so sorry." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Do you know how much you hurt me, Lucas? I trusted you. I thought you cared." "I did care," he said, his voice breaking. "I was young and stupid. I didn't know how to handle things. I was scared, and I made the worst mistake of my life." I looked away, my heart aching. Part of me wanted to walk away and never see him again. But another part of me saw the pain in his eyes and the sincerity in his voice. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said honestly. "I understand," he said. "But I want to make things right. Please give me a chance to prove that I've changed." I didn't answer right away. We walked in silence for a while, the sound of the river filling the space between us. When we reached the end of the path, I turned to him. "I need time, Lucas," I said. "Take all the time you need," he said. As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a small glimmer of hope. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I couldn't forget what Lucas had done. But maybe, just maybe, I could learn to forgive. It had been a week since Lucas told me the truth. During that time, I thought about everything our past, our conversations, and the person he seemed to be now. My emotions were a storm. Some days I felt angry, remembering the pain he caused me. Other days I felt confused because I could see he had changed. Finally, I decided it was time to talk to him. I couldn't carry this weight alone anymore. "Lucas," I said over the phone, "can we meet?" "I need to talk to you, of course," he said quickly. "When and where?" "The park," I said. "Tomorrow afternoon?" The next day, I arrived early. I sat on the same bench where we had shared pretzels not long ago. My hands were cold, even though the sun was shining. I didn't know how this conversation would end, but I knew it was necessary. Lucas arrived a few minutes later. He looked nervous, but also hopeful. "Hi, Mary," he said, sitting next to me. "Hi," I replied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sounds of the park, the laughter of children, the rustling of leaves filled the silence. Then I took a deep breath. "Lucas," I began, "I need to tell you how much you hurt me." He looked at me, his face serious. "I'm listening," he said softly. "When we met years ago, I trusted you," I said. "I thought you cared about me. You made me feel special, like I mattered. But then, you disappeared. You didn't say goodbye. You didn't explain. You just left." Tears filled my eyes, but I kept going. Do you know how hard it was for me? I kept wondering what I did wrong, why I wasn't enough. It took me a long time to heal from that. Lucas's face was full of regret. "Mary, I am so sorry," he said. "I was selfish. I didn't think about how my actions would affect you. I was scared of commitment, scared of messing things up. But in the end, I messed things up anyway." I wiped my tears and looked at him. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me the truth back then?" "I was a coward," he admitted. "I thought it would be easier to just leave than to face the situation. But I see now how wrong I was. I can't change what I did, but I want you to know that I deeply regret it." His words were sincere, and I could see the pain in his eyes. Still, the scars of the past were not easy to ignore. "Lucas," I said, "I don't know if I can forgive you. Trust isn't something you can fix overnight." "I understand," he said, "and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want to show you that I've changed, that I'm not the same person I was back then." We sat in silence for a moment. I thought about everything we had shared over the past few weeks, the laughter, the deep conversations, the kindness he had shown. I could see he was trying to be better, but was it enough? "I want to believe you," I said finally, "but I need time, and I need you to be patient with me." Lucas nodded. "I'll wait as long as you need, Mary, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." His words touched my heart, but I knew this wasn't just about him. It was also about me. Forgiving Lucas wasn't just about giving him a second chance. It was about letting go of the pain I had been carrying for so long. "I'll try," I said. "I'll try to forgive you. But it won't be easy." He smiled, a mixture of relief and hope on his face. "Thank you, Mary. That means more to me than you know." Over the next few weeks, Lucas kept his promise. He was patient and understanding, never pushing me to trust him before I was ready. We spent time together, but I made sure to set boundaries. Slowly, I began to see that he really had changed. One evening, as we walked by the lake, Lucas stopped and turned to me. "Mary," he said, "I want to thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. I don't deserve it, but I'm so grateful." I looked at him and realized that I no longer felt the same anger or pain. It wasn't gone completely, but it was lighter, like a weight I had been carrying for too long. "Lucas," I said, "I think I'm ready to move forward, but we need to take it slow. I still need time." "Of course," he said, "I'll follow your pace." As we walked back to town, I felt a sense of peace. Forgiving Lucas didn't erase the past, but it allowed me to let go of the pain and focus on the present. That night, I sat by my window, looking at the stars. Life was full of unexpected turns, but I was learning to face them with strength and hope. Lucas and I weren't perfect, and our story wasn't either, but it was ours, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to write the next chapter. What would you do if you were Mary? Would you forgive Lucas? Why or why not? Write your answer in the comments. We want to know what you would do in this situation. Learning English is like Mary's journey with Lucas. It takes time, patience, and courage to try again after mistakes. Keep practicing, keep learning, and remember, every step you take is progress. You can do it.